Welcome to episode 11, where I, for the first time ever, get to interview James Valentine. And today he's going to tell a bit of his story, answer some healing questions, and invite us into some of his journey over the past few years. I do want to proceed with a bit of a trigger warning. If you have experienced any kind of abuse in your past, this is your warning right now. Um, a year and a half ago, we met and we kind of began our own healing journey together. We kind of learned and explored new ways we needed to heal, and we learned from each other. Um, and it reminded us a little bit of a path that we've been on towards healing, and we inspired each other on new journeys toward healing. But what I want to ask you is, how did your healing journey begin over the past probably 5 years?
I'd say most of what I would consider my healing journey is within the last 3 years, maybe even slightly less than that. Um, I I would say that some of the significant things at the beginning of my healing journey were I recognised and knew that despite all that was going on, I was okay, and I think I'd always believed that about myself. And so even at a point where about 3 years ago, I had left what was then family home and um, been married for 20 odd years. I was out of home. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a job, um, and staying at a friend's house. I think even at that point, I still had a kind of certain sense that I was okay. And so people would say, I mean, a few friends of mine said, your whole life has fallen apart. And I was like, yeah, but I think I'm okay. And it was almost like I didn't even conceive the level of stress there should have been at the time when I'd left that space. And so I think my healing journey began with a kind of the rock bottom for me was probably felt by a number of other people. In it, I didn't feel as though it was complete rock bottom. Confusion, yes. And when I was at my friend's house, it was as if that was a kind of retreat space. So I think I began to gather people around me, some of which had knowledge of this kind of behaviour that I was experiencing or had experienced that I had no idea of. And some people were there just to make sure that I was fed and watered and warm and all the rest of it. Um, and so, in a way, gathering people was part of that healing journey. 4 months later, and I guess my knowledge about the situation increased and my thinking about the situation increased and changed. I, in about the same kind of period of about a couple of months, I had a conversation with one of those friends, and she described to me about a concept that I'd only really come across in a couple of books previously. I never really looked into it, called narcissism, which I hadn't come across. And that was something that when I described the behavior of people around me at the time, they, they, in a book that I had, it looked very, up until then, I'd assumed that I was to blame. I was okay, but I was still to blame, and I felt guilty, and I was carrying like other people. So I think it was a kind of revelation to me to read a book on that, to then begin to go, oh, actually, I've been trying to work out something that wasn't even possible to work out. Or, no, that's not quite true. It is possible to work out, but once you realize what it is, it's not something that you can try and help. Someone can't change who is that. And that's the battle you can't kind of win. But I tried to. So I guess one of the steps, if one of the steps in my healing journey was support friends, safe space retreat, then a kind of a close sort of second in terms of thinking in terms of awareness was things on narcissism and what that looked like, and then realizing that I wasn't completely to blame, and there wasn't anything I could do in that regard. So that was the first thing. The second was within about a month of reading that book, I started the first course of counselling. I'd say it was, I think I'd say it was restorative counselling at the time. It was giving me some kind of what I'd see now as concepts to help me realize that I wasn't to blame, and to almost kind of clear my head in some of the confusion and help me think about emotions in a way that I hadn't had a space to do that. Someone to kind of ask me questions. I think there's three things there, isn't there?
So I asked, what was your first step towards healing? But I want to ask a couple follow-up questions, and let's just see what happens. Because I think this is important also if we ask this question. What precisely did you need to heal from? Or even what did you need to heal within your own soul?
Okay.
Even heart, soul, and mind, whatever that might mean.
Oh, wow, that's a good question. What do I need to heal from?
I think it's important, and we can think about this, but it's important if we're going to talk about our healing journey, what are we healing from? And also why? Do you know what I mean?
Wow, I feel quite emotional actually.
This is the powerful part. This is the healing part. This is like the depth of it, you know?
My honest answer to that is that I would say I needed to heal from running and hiding, and that some of the horrors of my past I'd never dealt with, and just to pretend. I don't know whether it was pretend, but survive or cope or keep going, or it'll be fine if I keep doing this. It'll be fine if I keep trying to do the next thing, trying to survive. What I would say now, and it's however difficult it is to say now, it's easier to say than it was, or even admit at any point in the last 20, 30 odd years, is that what I needed to heal from really does stem from all the way back in childhood. And in a way, it's almost like I would think my way out of saying something like that because it feels quite a cliche, but at the same time, actually beginning to see, when I read a book on narcissism, which I mentioned a minute ago, it was easy to write down and say that that was one of my parents. And therefore, I was beginning to start to frame, or beginning to realize that the true nature, true experiences of my own childhood. So what I needed to heal from was that it was something I'd never dealt with and tried to run from, hide from, not start to talk about. One of the things I know now, strangely enough, and through the self-awareness, is the kind of way that I'm sort of programmed, or the way that I act, or the way that I think, is someone who doesn't see abuse for what it is. And as a child, you don't have any choice. You're in it. Um, and and actually starting to use words like that and naming that as what was I'd experienced became part of what I needed to accept. And I don't know whether I'd never thought of, it is madness. It's bonkers thinking about it now. But at the same time, either you don't want to admit things when you're a child, or you don't see things as you're a child, or you don't want to hear things as a child, and even um, like it's just not seeing. It's like you wouldn't be ready for it anyway. But I think it's only now that no child is going to know what a concept of things like narcissistic behavior, or want to even hear that that's what your parents are. Um, okay, so I think the other side of that is distance. So when you're swimming around in things, actually, I didn't see, you don't see the color of the water that you're swimming around in. So I think one of the things that I recognized is that I knew that there was, I'd still say that there was parts of me that weren't great, even if I was kind of just generally okay.
So let me ask, what did you believe about yourself as a child?
I would say that I knew on one level that I was things like clever and a good listener and a friend to lots of people. I knew I was quite healthy, quite like sporty, quite competitive. These were things that probably I began to realize I knew about, and were probably my strong points. I wasn't a straight A student at school, but certainly above average in most subjects and got A's in a couple. Um, so certainly spent a lot of time doing school and like um, got involved in various activities like church and things. So some of that was part of my, so I guess, teenage life. And I know it's not quite the answer to your question, but I think one of the things that I would say is that I believed these things about myself in a way to kind of help me survive. And almost despite never hearing the kind of positive affirmation from my parents about these things, there were things that I naturally went and did. So, and or chose to do or committed myself to doing. And I would say um, that um, almost from about the age of 11, 12, I knew to stop believing the things my parents said, because either it was non-existent or it was about not being good enough, um, or not being not being good enough, I think, was probably one of them. And I think one of the things was that I think I felt responsible as if I grew up. I felt like I had to grow up. I had to be responsible. It was as if like there was a kind of switch went on when I was about 10, 11, that I knew I just had to grow up and make this, make my life happen, because it wasn't going to be with the support of my parents. Actually, they were only there to cause stress, and it wasn't safe. I knew that it was weird. I don't think I'd say the word safe. I knew that it was cold. I knew words that I'd articulated to other people, whether it was cold, it wasn't warm, it was it was you know, it was a place I didn't want to spend time. You know, I'd stay out late at night. I would, you know, and I wouldn't stay out late. You know, it wasn't about trawling the streets in ragged clothes. It was like staying out late to play football, staying out to do stuff like activities or whatever. So it's like I try and spend as least amount of time there as possible. But I think it was a kind of feeling responsible, that I was the one who was responsible for sort of, and I was the one who could deal with the pain that I thought they were feeling. I had to stay calm. I had to keep um, keep the peace. Well, not quite keep the peace, but like um, not rock the apple cart, not make it difficult for them. Um, I'm sure there's more than, I mean, there is more than this, but I'm trying to sort of like, um, you know, so when it came down to it, actually the time I spent at home was pretty much walking on eggshells,
Mhm.
because actually there was always some kind of emotional ticking bomb about to go off. So in some ways it was about navigating that and just doing the thing they wanted. And when I say they, I don't necessarily mean my dad, but he was in the same ticking bomb as well. Um, so so actually we would all be responsible if that other person was annoyed or angry or upset. Um, and I remember that from a very early age, probably 5, 6, 7. Um, so um, so yeah, I think that what I felt, well, I suppose what I needed to heal from was always being responsible, um, always having to navigate around somebody else's needs and not think of my own at all. Um, think of myself, yeah, I guess make cause myself to be small in every space,
Mhm.
um, like to concede to other people. So so then to apologize for everything, to, you know, I guess in another way, yeah, I guess to stand up for myself in a way that's healthy. Um, and I guess I had this kind of looming presence of somebody who everyone navigated around, who I didn't want to be like. So therefore, I would kind of shrivel up into the corner and try not to be this dominant person. But that meant I didn't stand up for myself. My default wasn't to do that. But I'd be responsible if they were angry or if they were upset. Um, so um, it's really hard to kind of say I needed to heal from being responsible, but I think there's something in that.
Yeah.
Um, I think I needed to heal from always thinking of myself that I had to uh, fix others, heal others, maybe is a thing, but being responsible, I think I didn't. Yes, I know there were. I know now there were significant lies and messages told to me, but I think I was spared some of those. I think other members of my family got them worse because I was in the sort of slightly kind of like older child, trophy kind of child, responsible child, conformist child role, and that's how I kind of, and I maintained that throughout.
What did little James need?
Little James didn't have any kind of, little James needed someone to say that he didn't need to take on everything. Little James needed to know that he could carry on playing and that somebody could nurture him and protect him. Um, Little James needed to know that he was okay and he could be important, and maybe more specifically important in a relationship. I think it's one thing being important because of your job and profession and those kind of things, but I think in a relationship to be important. um, Little James needed to be safe. Little James needed to be taken seriously, to be heard, to not have to grow up as quickly. Little James needed not to be scared, frightened, on edge. On
How have you healed that space, the little James that's inside your heart and your spirit and your mind?
the first thing is just to be aware. In therapy, recently, it was almost to be aware that little James actually existed and that there was such a thing, a person, part of me. We'll say this: there's that part of me that maybe I'd always attributed to something else. Maybe that responsibility, that ache, that loneliness, that being alone. Maybe we'll edit this out, but it's almost a sense of like that almost felt like this kind of mysterious, said to be like God-shaped hole thing. I knew there was a lack. I knew there was something, and maybe saying and like so healing little James is to kind of say, well, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that I would say that part of my faith journey in becoming becoming a Christian is about age 10 and a half, at a similar time that probably that childhood James went as well. I would say there's probably a really big coincidence there. So the healing, which is your question, I think awareness of little James and this inner child of me that didn't have that nurture, didn't have that safety, didn't have all those things, that kind of got left behind when I left childhood behind and tried to grow up really quickly. So awareness, being close to it actually, and just saying, this is a part of me that has to be listened to and to given safe space for and to heal. And so with my therapist over the last 4 months, there's been a space of listening to and hearing from and giving space to that inner child that that got left behind. And every time I listen to what that voice is saying, that inner child, that real core me, feels like a step up towards being more whole and being healed. And but I'm hearing stuff that, and then working through some of that stuff that's being revealed. I mean, it's almost a kind of a much more coherent me, because those bits feel a bit more coherent, a bit more closer together. And I think I can, that some of those things that little James needed to hear or should have been part of my childhood, I've been able to reconnect with him now, sort of 20, 30 years on, and let him know that he's safe and protected and it's okay to talk. And So some of that is a reconnecting, but I'm sure there's more to do, and I'm aware there's probably more to do still, and that's okay. But I think going back to your original question, what I needed to heal from or begin to heal from 3 or 4 years ago was the hiding and the running, and therefore like leaving childhood behind was part of that hiding and running, and leaving the um, leaving all that behind and not wanting to deal with it. It felt awful, uncomfortable, painful, um, and not even seeing it for what it was. And I guess I didn't, because I didn't see it for what it was. When the scale started to fall 2 years ago, I started to learn about these things and realised that I'd spent 30 odd years trying to do something that was never going to happen. Um, but I felt responsible for it.
Have you ever told old James that he doesn't have to hold that responsibility anymore?
Yeah,
With,
I remember one of the things my therapist said in that first therapy session was he said something about like um, other people's emotions aren't my responsibility. So it was almost to say that was a kind of just a real revelation to me. So the fact that those people around me who were abusive would be angry, it wasn't my responsibility that they were angry. They needed to own that. And I think hearing that from a therapist, even then, which is like 18 months, I mean, the good thing about being clever and perceptive is you learn really quickly. Doing it's different, but like almost like learning these concepts was like I almost, almost took it on board, accepted it, um, and then I couldn't stop, and still probably can't stop reading about the healing process and myself and all that kind of thing. But it's almost like this is a new topic, it's a new thing, and I'm a new topic to learn more about.
mm-hmm.
As various onion layer skins come off, or internal kind of core self is revealed through the molten larvae of all that, like, is starting to bubble up, then I'm wanting to know more and connect with it and feel it in ways, so there's so many things. So your question, I think, was probably answered with the therapy I went to, beginning to, as almost to say, to hear that it wasn't my fault, it wasn't my responsibility. Other people that should be responsible for their emotions, how they project. It's not for me to take on and feel that.
Where are you now in your healing process?
I'm where am I in my healing process? I'm where I am today. Um, every day. What I'm beginning to realise is that gnawing ache of pain, of aloneness and agony of the previous 40 odd years, and I was putting off so much. I didn't allow myself to have almost good days and bad days. Every day was a struggle to get through. You just kind of survived and got through. Every day was very similar in that way, and nothing really changed. But now I kind of have good days and slightly bad days, or they're not really bad days, but they're kind of like days where I'm more aware of how I feel and that things are difficult, and naming them and going, this is a difficult thing. This is a trauma I'm living through. This is something that's triggered me. This is something to stop. And so it's almost like where I'm at now is going, I'm in a safe place. I know there's people around me who love me, care for me, who are deeply kind of rooted in loving me and cheering me on and supporting me, and I know I've got access to therapists and all those kind of things. And so I feel very kind of grounded in all of that and in myself. But I actually have maybe more awareness of pain days, and I don't think they're bad days. I think it's awareness that, oh, there's something else. There's another bit of the onion skin. There's another bit of like, oh, I'd never thought of that. Oh, I've never thought of that. Oh, here's an anniversary day of something. So actually it's seeing things in a different light, but it's also seeing things when and naming it and going, okay, this could be difficult. This feels a bit odd. Why am I feeling this? Now I'm just so it's not so it's like where am I at now? I'm in the middle of the process of the rest of my life in which I have tools to be able to, I won't say deal with things, but patterns and tools to be able to stop and feel safe and loved, to be able to go, okay, what is this? And deal with it or listen to it and feel it. Um, oh boy, that hit me out of the blue. I didn't expect that on that day or whatever it was. And then go, well, it's okay, or it's not okay. I'm not trying to hide it. Um, so I'm not going to sit here in early April 2021 and say, look at me, I'm healed. But I'm going to say, I'm in a far better place than I was, well, 2 years ago, 12 years ago, 20 years ago. In fact, I'd say I'm in a better place than I was even a week ago, because I think every day is almost a kind of a new awareness of something, or a day to kind of clock in on myself and to ground myself and to feel things differently, to see things differently, to feel happy and peaceful, and to feel anger or disappointment, to all of those things. Um, so I'm in the middle, and things are better than they were. Um, and I love the journey of discovery. And I think it's bonkers that, it, conversations with people or books that I read or stories that I read out the blue, or films that I even watch. I mean, man, films I watch, right, like from the weirdest angle, kind of go, there's another memory, there's another thing. And I didn't notice them before. And that's because I wasn't even wanting to notice that, or my brain was protecting me, I think, from those things. Um, and now I know I can't watch things.
Mm.
I know I can't watch things, but I'd have watched them before. Maybe it's the thing about having your heart kind of opened.
Mm.
Um, here's me blindly going and watching. Here's me blindly going and reading Harry Potter, and I didn't realise half the stuff in there, and you can just see stuff, patterns. But I still want to finish the book. But I wasn't going to finish Stranger Things. No chance. I'm not afraid of finding out more about me. In fact, I'm quite excited. I've never been afraid of learning, and I've never been afraid of discovery. I've maybe been afraid of doing stuff. I think there has been fear there. Avoiding taking risks, taking the safe route, avoiding that kind of thing. But almost like it's a new toy. I'm a new toy to myself. So I've got one more self-help book on my shelf that might be next, but I'm going to get to the end of Harry Potter before I do that.
Thank you for answering the questions and being vulnerable, and for inspiring me to be more vulnerable. By the way, thank you for that. That was really beautiful, my love. Really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
James, thank you for being vulnerable about your story today and for answering deep questions and for inspiring me. I know your story is going to inspire many people on their journey. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching. Please, will you like and subscribe and share with your friends if you think that they might learn something or might gain something from listening to this story. We will see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye for now. I poured out my soul. Come on, this should be easy. Come on.
I can pour out my soul. I can't do this kind of stuff. I can make you cry, but I can't.
That's a great outtake.
Okay.
Well, today I discovered that I'm not the only person to steal from my parents. Yeah.
Chocolate? Are we talking about chocolate here?